Perfect for caving. Sweeney is a dirtbag caver who has sold all his earthly possessions, his house, his car, his TV, just to keep crawling through holes in the ground. This is Jonathan Sims, probably the most experienced caver on our expedition. He's been caving for 30 years and has had some harrowing experiences. He was once in caving in Mexico, and he actually went to the pub and told some of his cave diving buddies that if they don't hear from him, to check out what's happening in Mexico. Well, when he was caving in Mexico, it started to rain very heavily and he got trapped in the cave. And he spent 10 days underground, trapped, until his buddies at the pub realized there was a problem, bought plane tickets, flew down to Mexico, brought their cave diving equipment, and saved his butt. He's had some really incredible experiences. Okay, so here's a picture of Vietnam. Our expedition is heading to Phong Nha Ki Bang National Park, located in central Vietnam. Right here, you can see that. We fly into Hanoi, take trains and buses down here. Okay, who knows who this is?
Ho Chi Minh.
Ho Chi Minh, thank you. Ho Chi Minh is Vietnam's George Washington, the central figure in their revolutionary wars against France and the United States. Although, don't get the idea that Ho Chi Minh was necessarily a good guy. That's kind of a hagiographic myth. He was a ruthless murderer. He ordered the execution of tens of thousands of landowners, intellectuals, teachers, and political opponents. So, although he's the father of the nation, he's not a good guy. Vietnam today is not what most Americans imagine. It's not a poverty-stricken, war-torn country where most people ride bicycles, despite this picture. I just like the picture. Actually, most people ride scooters in Vietnam. I'm sure people in the audience have been there. Incredibly efficient. Clinton restored full diplomatic relations with Vietnam in 1995, and the U.S. has provided about $200 million in aid in the past 15 years. Vietnam today is a vibrant, bustling country that has done an extraordinary job overcoming what they call the American War. Although the country is only a quarter larger than Wyoming, it has 100 million citizens. So, what is that? 200 times the population of Wyoming. About a third of whom live in cities. The U.S. is Vietnam's major export partner. Vietnam exports what many of you are wearing in the audience right now. Check your labels. Clothes, backpacks, shoes. Both Nike and the North Face have huge factory systems in Vietnam. Okay, so it took us a few days to get down to Phong Nha Ki Bang National Park. It's in the middle of the country. It's a landscape of sheer limestone mountains clogged with heavy foliage because of all the rain. Much like in France, village homes are made of brick with tile roofs and huge gardens. Vietnam was a colony of France for about 60 years. Note what apparently looks like a pond in the middle of the rice field. Actually, this is a bomb crater. The infamous Ho Chi Minh Trail, which was really just a web of trails, passes right by the park and all the caves. The Viet Cong often hid in these caves during American bombing raids. Early in the American-Vietnam War, bicycles were the primary form of transportation along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, often carrying over 500 pounds of equipment and supplies. Now, I think it's important to give a little history here because it influences how people experience Vietnam. Between 1964 and 1973, the United States Air Force dropped more than 2 million tons of bombs on North Vietnam and Laos. More than was rained down by all planes during World War II. Every 8 minutes, for 24 hours a day, for 9 years, Vietnam and Laos were bombed. American bombing killed over 500,000 civilians during the Vietnam War and left the landscape pockmarked with craters. Over 3 million Vietnamese, Cambodians, and Laotians died in the Vietnam War. The U.S. lost about 58,000 soldiers. Also during the war, millions of gallons of Agent Orange, a toxic herbicide that causes birth defects for generations because it gets into the soil and it gets into the plants, were sprayed over vast regions of Vietnam. According to the Geneva Convention, Agent Orange is a chemical weapon. There are 3 million victims of Agent Orange in Vietnam today. Now, as a side note, those who could not hide in caves, there are a lot of caves in Vietnam, dug tunnels by hand to protect themselves and their families from the bombing. My wife and I went to these tunnels, the Vinh Moc tunnels near Da Nang on the Gulf of Tonkin. This was a typical underground living space. Contrary to popular belief, most tunnels were dug by civilians trying to protect their families, not by the Viet Cong trying to infiltrate American lines. During the 60s, thousands of Vietnamese were living permanently underground. 60 families lived in the Vinh Moc tunnel complex for 6 years, from 1966 to 1972. 17 babies were born 75 feet underground in the Vinh Moc tunnels. But that's kind of ancient history in one way. 75% of the population of Vietnam were born after the end of the war, 1975. So we had a great welcome, and many of them don't remember the horrors of the war. So 40 years later, our team of crazy cavers arrived, and the first order of business is to go shopping for food for an expedition when you get there. And honestly, the Brits are terrible at this. They don't know how to do it. They just got noodles. So here's a bunch of noodles, boxes and boxes of this is just top ramen, right? This is all this is. And then we go, got some vegetables, local market. We bought some fuel. We knew the cave is so big, we knew we'd be underground for days, if not weeks. So we have an MSR stove, get the fuel off the local filling station. And after a couple of days of organizing our food and equipment, we set off westward into the jungle in search of what we hope will be the largest cave in the world. There are 10 cavers, 20 porters, myself, a non-caver, and National Geographic photographer Carson Peters, who is quite an experienced caver. Here's Carson. All the really good pictures in this show are Carson's. Now, most of our gear, for those of you who are into gear things, was packed in dry bags. But of course, the porters' gear, they just carried in their rice bags. You can see that on the back of this dry bag. Now, this guy on the left with the hat is named Ho Khan. And his father was killed in one of the American bombing raids, and he took cover as a young boy in the caves in this region. He survived Vietnam by hiding in these caves, and subsequently he hunted and fished. And he's the only one who actually knew where the entrance to this cave was. The Limburgs had hired him the year before, paid him a full-time wage to just search for the entrances to caves. So going through the jungle in Vietnam, I'm sure a lot of you have been to Southeast Asia. It's incredibly dense, thick. We spent most of the time going along streams. This was a lot easier than bushwhacking, faster. Here we have Sweeney on the left, Clarkey, one of our many Vietnamese porters, and expedition leader Howard Limbert. It took us 3 days of jungle hiking, often passing through remote villages of indigenous mountain people to reach the entrance to the cave. These are the people the French called the Montagnards. They are largely subsistence farmers, living primarily off pigs, chickens, and rice. They sell a little bit, but mostly they eat it. Now here's the first glimpse we get of the entrance of the cave after 3 days of hiking. We camped right at the opening, cooking over wood fires, putting our tents up in the sand. Dinner, veggies and noodles. Veggies and noodles. That goes the entire trip. This is an unexploded American bomb near the entrance of the cave. Now the next morning, Ho Khan told us that actually this cave was just a portal through a ring of mountains. We would have to cross through this passageway to get to the largest cave
in the